waiting for the front porch to be erected. We have no hazardous hazard gases and no hazardous situation with the vehicle. It performed perfectly all the way down from entry interface to its splashdown in the Pacific at 7:07 and 27 seconds p.m. Central Time. And as you can see, the first phalanx of recovery personnel now pulling up alongside of Integrity. This includes Navy divers, a Navy flight surgeon, and other recovery personnel who have trained for several years for this recovery process. Continuing to get excellent views. At this hour, some 41 minutes following splashdown, the vehicle has been powered down. There's no hazardous gas emanating from the vehicle. That's why the first team of recovery personnel has been able to pull alongside Integrity. And the reports continue to come in that the 4 astronauts are in excellent shape. Yes. This is Mission Control Houston, continuing to watch the initiation of the recovery of Integrity's astronauts. One by one, they'll be brought out of the spacecraft onto a large inflatable raft just a short time from now. In the meantime, we can go back to the USS John P. Murtha, where my colleague Megan Cruz is standing by to provide her situation report. Megan, can you hear us?
Hey Rob, yes I can hear you. Thank you. Yeah, we're back here on the bow of the recovery ship where there are still plenty of people peering out into the water. We are not very far from the action everyone is seeing on their screen now. The Orion spacecraft, Integrity, in the ocean, surrounded by a number of recovery boats. As Rob has been saying, in those recovery boats, NASA and Navy personnel specifically trained to get the astronauts out of Orion. some of our wide shots, you can probably see that there are 6 boats out in the water. More than 40 people out in the water right now on those boats. First order of business. Astronauts out. Again, we splashed down to the Pacific Ocean just after 5 p.m. Pacific time here. It's a requirement by NASA to be able to get the crew out of Orion within 2 hours of splashdown. So doing great on time so far. Plenty of time. No rush either. You know, I was speaking to NASA flight surgeon Rick Schuring earlier in this broadcast, and he said to me, you know, no rush to get the crew out. Just want to make sure that they're feeling good. And whenever they're ready to take their step out of Orion and onto that large raft, the front porch, folks will be ready. You're getting these beautiful shots from our aerial assets. The ship itself, where I'm on, just 3,000 yards away. Again, plenty of people on the boat here, glued to the side closest to where they can see all this action. And again, with just 3,000 yards separating us, great views from the bow here. You can see now that side hatch is open. One of the Navy personnel is about to get inside there. In they go. In total, 4 will go into Orion. So it'll be a little bit of a tight squeeze, but the goal is to have a recovery personnel with each astronaut assessing them. Boats getting closer now. Again, that one that's right up against Orion, those are the divers that will go in to the spacecraft to check on each of the astronauts. These other boats will begin doing a number of things, putting on that stabilization collar onto Orion, building that front porch. Eventually they will retrieve the parachutes, as well as tow Orion back to the well deck of the recovery ship here. And so as we wait for the Navy and NASA personnel to get their assessment of the crew inside of Orion, why don't we toss it back to Rob for an update.
Yeah, thank you, Megan. Here in Mission Control, Flight Director Rick Henfling and the entry team of flight controllers still on duty. The vehicle has been powered down for some time now. There are no hazardous gases emanating from Integrity. That, of course, allowed the recovery personnel to approach the vehicle and then open the hatch to begin the initial medical assessment of the crew, as you just indicated. Now we're standing by for the erection of that inflatable raft, the front porch, alongside of the vehicle that will enable the crew to be extracted one by one onto the raft, have a moment or two to get their land legs back before they're hoisted into two hovering Navy helicopters, 2 crew members for each helicopter, for a short flight back to the deck of the USS John P. Murtha. All of Integrity's systems operated flawlessly throughout the course of the approach to the Earth, the entry into the Earth's atmosphere, and all of the key milestones that followed in this high-speed return to Earth for Integrity. A mission that spanned more than 694,000 miles from the vehicle's launch from the Kennedy Space Center atop the Space Launch System back on April 1st. As we mentioned at the top of the broadcast, the last time that the Apollo program saw a splashdown in the Pacific was Apollo 17 back on December 19th, 1972. So for the first time in some 53 and a half years, we have reenacted that with the arrival of Integrity's astronauts as they flew around the moon in that historic lunar flyby that began with a trans-lunar injection burn that took them out of Earth orbit following 24 hours of a high Earth orbit trajectory. The high Earth orbit trajectory enabled flight controllers here to have a full 24 hours to evaluate the systems on Integrity and the condition of the crew before they would commit to flying to the moon. with the side hatch of Orion having been opened to set the stage for the erection of the inflatable life raft known as the front porch, to be erected alongside the spacecraft for the extraction of the crew. Let's play for you an interview that my colleague Megan Cruz conducted on the USS John P. Murtha with Navy diver First Class David McMahon that explains how this process is unfolding.
Okay, Davey, so you and some of your team, one last look over of the stabilization collar, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so what is this stabilization collar?
This is what's going to stabilize the capsule out there in the ocean. We don't know how good the weather or the waves will be that day, so this will help prevent any unnecessary occurrences from happening, stabilizing the capsule and the astronauts inside.
So basically this is a float that will go around Orion. I'm assuming that what they're doing right now, these are the lines that will attach the collar onto Orion?
That is correct.
And so what are they doing here?
So we've got the lower line that will secure the inflation device before we inflate it. That gives us the go-ahead that it's secure in space, and then we'll inflate it. And then once that is done, we'll undo all the carabiners and get this orange line on top tied in the same fashion. And then this will be secured to the capsule, and the astronauts can safely take their first steps out of the capsule onto the front porch.
Okay, and how long will it take them to set up the stabilization collar?
We should definitely be able to handle this in under 10 minutes.
Okay, wow. And then you just mentioned the front porch. So basically after they set up this stabilization collar, then they set up what's called the front porch here.
That's correct.
Okay, and what's the front porch?
Front porch is basically a bigger waiting room for the astronauts to sit in while we wait for the helicopters to show up and grab them.
Okay, so the medical team that was inside with the crew, they're going to help them out and onto the front porch?
That is correct.
And then what happens here?
We have higher trained medical personnel also on board the front porch that will give them lookovers and just make sure they're okay while we wait for the helicopters to show up.
Okay. How does it feel, I mean, your team, you, to be part of a mission that's returning astronauts from the moon in more than 50 years?
We all feel extremely honored to be a part of this, as well as a bigger mission for the Navy and joining up with NASA to do great things.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like you and your team are ready?
Yes, very ready.
Cool. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Once again, the recovery operations are continuing out in the Pacific. We shortly should see that life raft, the front porch, erected alongside the side hatch of the vehicle. A number of flight controllers have come into the flight control room to receive congratulations from Entry Flight Director Rick Henfling. But we're going to stick with our operations out in the Pacific as we await the extraction of the 4 crew members who are reported to be in excellent condition. Again, while we stand by for that front porch to be erected alongside of the side hatch of the vehicle, let's go back to the USS John P. Murtha and Megan Cruz. Megan?
Hey, Rob. Pausing now to listen to some internal audio loops. Again, the operations team here on the ship communicating with everyone out on the water. It seems like currents are hindering them a little bit from unfurling and inflating the stabilization collar as well as the front porch. But again, the requirement to get the crew out within 2 hours of splashdown, plenty of time. So no concerns just yet. But as calm as the water looks, yeah, it looks like it's hindering the teams just a tad. You can see in some of our shots that side hatch still open. Again, inside there are now 8 people inside. 4 divers, Navy divers, all with medical training, each assigned to an astronaut each. Making sure that they're comfortable, feeling good. As you've heard us say in the broadcast, you know, they expect a little bit of discomfort. Again, these astronauts just traveled back to Earth at 25,000 miles an hour, a nearly 695,000 mile journey around the moon. If you think you get carsick. Again, 6 boats out there, lots of gear with them, just in case, right? As we said, the crew reported feeling great, but again, all those folks out there in case they weren't, right? NASA is all about making sure we think about every situation that can happen, and so of course wanted to be ready in case any of our astronauts needed more medical attention while out there in the water. You see now teams again trying to set up the stabilization collar and front porch for the crew to get out of Orion. They need both, right? The stabilization collar will keep Orion from swaying as you see it is doing now. And then they will connect the front porch to the stabilization collar so that the crew can take 2 steps and they will be in the front porch. Not a lot of chatter on the mission audio loops. That's a good thing. Again, things proceeding pretty nominally, even if they're fighting some currents out there on the Pacific Ocean. Again, the goal, setting up the stabilization collar and the front porch so that the crew can rest comfortably in the front porch, get placed into harnesses so that 2 helicopters can lift them off the front porch and onto the USS John Murtha here. The helicopters are going to take turns picking up an astronaut. So again, Helo 1 and Helo 2. Okay, and the recovery team here on the ship just got a report from the undersea medical officer who is inside the capsule with the crew. He is reporting all 4 members are green. All of our 4 astronauts, Reed, Victor, Christina, Jeremy, green, meaning they are feeling great, not the complexion of their skin. They are feeling great, happy to be home.